Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Happy Friday. It's Friday, the 17th of July, 2026. Thank you for tuning in to EWTN's Catholic Connection. It's warm out there, and it's warm over here in Bella Italia. We're already at, I was just telling my producer Richard before we hit the airwaves, 100 degrees. It is 3 o'clock right now, and this is the high supposedly for today, but the real feel is like, I think 107 or something, and it's pretty much the same back in the States from what I'm understanding in terms of this heat wave that is in a number of different areas in the United States. And my home state of Michigan, and God willing, we're returning there after the show on Monday. I've been in touch with family and friends, and they continue to send me these videos, and you can't even see the Ambassador Bridge or the Detroit skyline. Up in northern lower Michigan, you can't see the Mighty Mac because of the smoke from the wildfires in Canada. And then we have that virus going on. So, and now that is in all kinds of states, I think over 30 states. So prayers across the pond and across the nation. Really, it's kind of crazy out there right now, but all is good. God is still in control, and we have a great show lined up for you that hopefully will help you get through this day and every day. We are going to start out with our good friend Peter Gagnon, our president of EWTN Studios. This will certainly lift your spirits because we have great programming for you every single day. And every Friday, Peter joins us and gives us an inside look. That's why we call it the Inside Word, as to what's going on in the next coming days and weeks of our programming, which is always helpful. Fact Check Friday, I was doing some research for the show this morning and went to one of my favorite sites called Newsbusters, which is from the Media Research Center, and they look at various stories that are often ignored somewhat or completely by the media. And this is why I want to share this particular story for you. This is all about a hearing, a House hearing that took place earlier this week. And it was a House hearing on DEI in medical schools, and Representative Mary Miller and others pressed school officials in California on transgender theology and other such DEI themes. And you won't believe what this one person, this one chancellor of the University of California, San Francisco, what he had to say about the issue of pregnancy and women. But then again, after our discussion, of course, that we've had many times on this show, maybe you won't be too surprised. And we're going to be addressing this on Monday as well with Dr. Teresa Farnan, and she's an expert on gender ideology. But these are the stories that should be out there, okay? So people can decide for themselves. You put it out there, and then you let them deal with the facts, and you pray about it, you look at it, you study it. But oftentimes the media keep these events from us because in one sense, it's an affirmation that it's bad because they know, I think instinctively, how bad it sounds, how insane it sounds, and they don't want you to have access to this information because they realize that people with brains will think about this and say, this is just wrong, completely wrong. So we'll discuss in Fact Check Friday, and then we're going to have a very interesting interview. He was actually on the World Over last night with Raymond Arroyo, of course. Dr. Peter Deneen is going to be contrasting the film The Odyssey with the actual story that Homer gave us. And he has a book all about this as well. But this big film is coming out. It's about to break. And there's been some controversy about it. I'd like his opinion on that as well. So that should be a very interesting interview. And then hour number 2, we are going to follow up on this big case regarding Heartbeat International. Paul Jonna is special counsel at Thomas More Society, and he's going to give us an update on this big lawsuit against Heartbeat in California. And the thing that to me is so ridiculous. So the left always accuses pro-lifers of only caring about the baby, as if caring about an unborn child is a bad thing. And they say, oh, you don't do anything for women. That's never been true. It's never been the case. And certainly not with amazing pregnancy resource centers such as Heartbeat International, which is an umbrella organization that services all these different resource centers around the country. They do phenomenal work. I've known the original founder, Peggy Hartshorn, for decades. And they're being sued by the state of California because they're claiming that they're putting out false information. They're being sued because the abortion industry is being impacted by pregnancy resource centers. So we'll get to the bottom of this, and that's coming up in the second hour, and hope you can stay tuned for both hours of the show here on a Friday. All right, weather-wise, we have widespread life-threatening flash and urban flooding that's continuing in south central Texas. We'll have an update on this in the news as well. There's also considerable flooding impacts possible across the central part of that state. Then we have this wildfire smoke that's impacting air quality across much of the Great Lakes region, all the way into southern New England and the Mid-Atlantic as well. And then there are also some great big storms that are coming, flash flooding, a lot of rain, obviously, in the southwest into the Great Basin. So kind of crazy weather out there across the country. Be safe, and if you're in one of those very warm areas, stay hydrated, and stay tuned to us here at EWTN's Catholic Connection. Oh my goodness, it's 5 minutes past the hour already, but let's get started with the news on a Friday morning. Well, shortly after our euthanasia law was definitively adopted in France earlier this week, the Catholic Church there expressed regret over what's described as a choice that breaks with the country's long tradition of health care and whose mission is to relieve suffering and accompany every person until the natural end of life. Vatican News is reporting the bishops there are recalling that they had taken part in discussions throughout the 4-year debate on this euthanasia law, emphasizing the Church's centuries-long experience in caring for the sick, the dying, and their families. And they told Vatican News they believe that legislation of this kind will fundamentally alter society's relationship with the vulnerable, the aged, those who are disabled, and also those who are ill. Nevertheless, they are insisting that they are not giving up. In their view, the matter is not over, as several significant legal avenues, they told Vatican News, are still open. They also said great vigilance is required, and the task is to move forward, especially by safeguarding the real freedom of healthcare institutions, ensuring respect for their ethical charters, and closely supporting all legal appeals. International Christian Concern Organization warning that religious freedom is facing growing pressure around the world. The ICC's 2026 Global Persecution Index examining persecution in more than 20 countries, while also raising concerns about restrictions on religious expression in parts of the West. That report identified Nigeria as the deadliest country for Christians and criticizing governments in China, India, and Nicaragua over actions affecting religious minorities and Christian communities. It's also alleging China is using surveillance technology to monitor religious groups beyond its borders. ICC also saying millions of Christians continue to face persecution because of their faith, and the group is urging greater awareness and action. President Trump saying he's declassifying evidence that shows the American election system is vulnerable to interference and fraud. In a primetime address from the White House last night, the president said China exploited weaknesses in our voting system to gain access to 220 million U.S. voter files.
Over a period of years, starting during the 2020 election cycle, the People's Republic of China carried out what is believed to be the largest compromise of election data in history.
Trump said China hacked our systems and projected its influence in the election back in 2020, adding that a deep state within the government fought to keep China's actions hidden from the American public. The president said China's efforts were an attempt to keep him out of power. He singled out the Biden administration for hiding the information, adding that he's asking the FBI to investigate what exactly was uncovered. He also says the White House has published a new election integrity website that discloses the documents. The White House is also saying talks are continuing between the U.S. and Iran. The press secretary Caroline Leavitt saying the recent U.S. strikes on Iran are because they violated the Memorandum of Understanding.
They have expressed they still want to make a deal to the president. We're talking to them, but again, the president is not going to allow them to fire on ships in the Strait without paying a consequence for that.
And she added that Iran's recent actions prove Trump's initial decision to launch Operation Epic Fury was right. This comes after the U.S. conducted strikes in northern Iran yesterday, and American forces are also intercepting a ship that was allegedly attempting to break the naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's military is saying it would target all U.S. infrastructure in the region if the president carries out threats he made to attack Iranian infrastructure. And inspired by the Holy Father's first encyclical, Deborah Castellano-Luboff with Vatican News reports more than 200 leading academics, innovators, and Nobel laureates signing a special peace declaration in Rome yesterday.
Luboff reports. The signing of the Rome Declaration on Nuclear Weapons and Artificial Intelligence took place on Thursday at Rome's Capitoline Hill, bringing to a close the Global Nobel Laureates Assembly on Artificial Intelligence and Nuclear War. The declaration was signed by Nobel laureates, international experts, scientists, religious leaders, and former heads of state and government. The appeal calls for renewed international cooperation in response to the challenges posed by nuclear weapons, AI, autonomous weapons, and new digital technologies. The assembly, held on July 14th and 15th at Borgo Laudato Si in the Pontifical Gardens of Castel Gandolfo, gathered more than 200 leading figures and representatives of international research institutions working in the fields of peace and AI. The event was inspired by the Pope's encyclical Magnificat Humanitas. During the final session at Rome's City Hall, speakers reflected on the risks facing humanity today. Professor Daniel Holtz of the University of Chicago said the world is experiencing a time of unprecedented danger, but added that there are concrete steps that can be taken to make society safer from nuclear weapons and AI. Cardinal Baldo Reina said that the declaration comes at a moment marked by rapid transformation and serious risks, including AI, nuclear weapons, geopolitical instability, and the crisis of multilateralism. He stressed that decisions concerning life and death, peace and war must remain under meaningful human control. Father Andrea Ciucci of the Pontifical Academy for Life also reflected on human ingenuity, noting that AI and nuclear power demonstrate how human creativity can be used either to build or to destroy. Noble
Secretary of State Marco Rubio was sounding the alarm on far-left political terrorism, the secretary issuing his warning during the opening of a State Department summit attended by roughly 65 foreign delegations, saying the threat has not been taken seriously enough.
Even today, the very idea that far-left terrorism could be a serious threat is treated as a right-wing fever dream, or worse, as a dangerous fascist conspiracy.
Rubio adding that far-left terrorism has carried different slogans and ideologies over the years.
They can call themselves anti-capitalist or anti-imperialist or communist or anarchist or Marxist, but the fundamental character is always the same. It's always the same. It is a poisonous resentment cloaked in the language of equality.
He urged attendees yesterday to see global counterterrorism as a priority, Rubio adding the administration is now rebuilding U.S. counterterrorism strategy around what it views as an increasingly transnational threat, arguing that the nation, along with its allies, must respond by expanding intelligence sharing, law enforcement cooperation, and efforts to disrupt terrorist financing. And two men accused of helping plan an attack on the White House UFC attack plot are pleading not guilty. Tyson Proper and Chandler Skaggs are each charged, along with 6 others, with conspiracy to provide material to support terrorists, as well as conspiracy to commit murder on federal government territory and to murder a federal government official. 13 minutes past the hour. Hope your Friday already, my goodness, is going well. It is a great day. We've got a great lineup for you right after the break. We are going to be chatting with our very own Peter Gagnon, president of EWTN Studios, with our Inside Word, giving you a sneak peek at great programming coming up so you don't miss anything. And then we'll take a look at the film, The Odyssey, and also a book related to it. Dr. Peter Deneen joins us. That's coming up, plus more Catholic Connection on a Friday. Stay tuned. It's July 17th. Great to be with you on a Friday and every day here at EWTN's Catholic Connection. And speaking of EWTN, our president of EWTN Studios with us this morning, Peter Gagnon, to talk about the Inside Word, as we call this segment, highlighting and giving you the inside look at great programming coming up. Good morning, Peter. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Teresa. Thanks for having me on, as always.
Yep, lots going on, I imagine, right?
I think lots going on. We always try to follow the liturgical calendar with our content. So, and we just have so many just fantastic saints, throughout the year. And this week is no different. We start off with tomorrow. We have a special on. It's called Blessed, the Martyrs of Compiègne, and there the the Carmelites who were martyred during the French Revolution. And so it's just inspiring story, how they were persecuted and murdered, and a lot of people don't understand what the French Revolution really did, and how horrific it was. But obviously the church survived and continues, and these are great examples. So that's going to air tomorrow at 2 p.m. Today is actually their feast day. And then we also have a good mix of our programming that we produce, as well as specials. So Call to Communion this week with Dr. David Anders. So he does his daily show on radio, but once a week we also do it on TV. So if people want to see him doing his program, it's going to air tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And this episode, he talks about priestly celibacy, questions about validity of marriage, faith and science, scrupulosity. So he really hits so many different topics, and he's just such a great gift to our listeners and viewers, because he's just so knowledgeable in all these areas. So check that out, Saturday at 4 p.m. And then tomorrow evening in our cinema slot, another saint whose feast day is coming up this week, Saint Bridget of Sweden. So she's the nun and mystic, and it's actually a beautiful film. So it airs at 8 p.m. Eastern, and that's kind of what we call our cinema slot. So every week we try to show, and a lot of times they're like 2 parts because the films are longer, but it's an original movie that looks at her life. And she's a founder of what is the Byzantine Order. So check out St. Bridget of Sweden tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. Then we'll move to Sunday, and this is actually our Vaticano program. So our Vatican office team produces a weekly show in Vaticano, highlighting some things. This week they explore Castel Gandolfo. So I know you had that. I mentioned that in the report.
Yeah.
You had either, and so people, and it's come back to the news because, Pope Leo is now going back there for the summer residence. Pope Francis stopped going there for a while. And so now that Pope Leo's gone back to that summer residence, so that explores Castel Gandolfo. It's 400 years of papal history there, which is pretty amazing, and how the town's role and the place of faith and refuge. And actually, it's a really bed of scientific discovery there as well. So it'll be a really interesting episode, so people can learn more about Castel Gandolfo. That airs Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And then our global nature of things continue, because we have a series called Catholic Canada. So if you want to learn this week, the episode is on the roots of faith in Quebec. So the host, Francis Deneen, goes to Quebec and shows the history of it, looks at the beautiful shrine of St. Anne, which is just gorgeous if you've ever been there. So that's another program to highlight the faith globally. We hit Canada. And so that's going to air Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And then we continue with our saints. So St. Mary Magdalene's feast day is on July 22nd. So we have a program. Living Divine Mercy is what we produce with the Marians in Stockbridge. And this week, Father Chris Aylar, he debunks a lot of the myths about St. Mary Magdalene. So you should check that out to learn more about the truths of her. And she's just an incredible saint to follow. And we'll actually have another program later in the week, actually on her feast day. So this program, Living Divine Mercy, is 9 a.m. on Monday. And then a couple other programs to highlight. Living Right with Dr. Ray. This week on Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern, he highlights the mental health of college students. So their mental and emotional health, and they actually go through a lot of difficulties, and they have a lot of pressures. And so his 2 guests, Dr. David Jobs and Dr. Susan Holman, will discuss their findings on how to help students as they navigate the world. A lot of time they're on their own at that time. They have a lot of pressures and even influences from the schools themselves. And so this will be a good episode to check that out. We are also another live event, speaking of Canada, from the Martyr Shrine in Midland and Ontario. There's a mass. It's celebrating 100 years of the opening of the shrine. Pope John Paul II went there in 1984. Right. They're going to have a mass on the same grounds, using that same papal altar. And that'll be Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. So check out that mass from Midland, Ontario. And then finally, another program on Mary Magdalene is going to air Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. It's called The Exile of Mary Magdalene. So it's a tradition of her journey to France and exploring the history and local accounts of her life. So if you want to learn more about Mary Magdalene, tune in Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. On her feast day.
Wow.
So that's kind of some of the programs we have coming up, and it's just a plethora. We really want to help people understand the lives of the saints and to be inspired by them, and to help us live more virtuous lives by following their example. And then also just other areas that we want to help people, whether it's, like I say, the emotional state of college students in that program, answering questions like Dr. Anders does. So we try to do a real wide variety of content for our audience, like you do on your radio show.
And I also think there's a lot of variety on all of the podcasts that you are giving publicity to.
Yeah, it's really, the podcasts have been fantastic. Siobhan's Catholics and Cappuccinos, Siobhan Hogan's podcast has really, we've highlighted both people who are in the entertainment industry, but also priests and religious and people who are trying to live out their faith. We're actually going to be taping some special episodes of those next week at the Napa Institute conference. So Siobhan will be there, and those will be coming up probably in a few weeks, and you won't want to miss some of those, because some of them are going to actually be pretty entertaining with the guests she has. I don't want to give it away, but people should tune into that. And in our podcast with Daniel Godinez, Lost and Found, just truly inspiring people geared towards the somewhat to the English-speaking Hispanic audience, which is a huge audience and stuff. We have Lila Rose, her podcast, which airs. We have the Chris Stefanik Show. And those are just people who are really doing amazing things within the church and highlighting guests. And podcasts is such a good format, because you can listen to it, while you're working. We have them all on our on-demand page and on our EWTN Plus, so people can go there and check those out and see the descriptions of all the different episodes and the guests they have, and find one that are entertaining to you. So we're trying to really like I say, explore all areas and all types of content and formats to serve our audience.
Yeah. And I would think, based on the amount of programs that we do, both on air and online, for example, different series and whatnot, so many are, as you just mentioned, and went through a beautiful litany, pun intended, regarding all the different programs they're doing on the saints, that they're probably, the programs on the saints are some of the most popular, are they not?
Oh, 100%. So when you look at what people are asking for, especially when people like to see the feature films on the saints, we have documentaries as well, but the films really inspire, because people are looking for programs that they can watch, as a family, that is entertaining, but also inspiring. And that's why the lives of the saints are such impactful content. I would always like to highlight our Doctors of the Church series that we do. So we have that Matthew Bunson hosts, and we're actually constantly doing new episodes. We're in the midst of producing one on the latest doctor, John Henry Newman. And so those are all it's interesting, because a lot of people, you hear about the saints, but a lot of people don't know their full history, and we try to provide that to people.
Right.
Really learn a lot more about them.
Yeah, and I love them. And those are my favorite programs as well, because I love our saints. Peter,
have
a great weekend.
And a lot of this stuff is on demand.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I always direct people to our main page, EWTN.com. Have a great weekend. This is always so fun and informative to know what's going on the network and online as well, for all of our great resources. We'll be right back. 28 minutes past the hour on a Friday. It's July 17th, 2026. Great to be with you, and appreciate all the information given to us each week by our president of EWTN Studios, Peter Gagnon, letting us know what's coming up. And remember, if you're in the car, you're driving, keep your arms and hands and vehicles in the vehicle at all times. And just go to EWTN.com, and you'll find everything that Peter mentioned. Very easy to search and find the program in which you may be interested. Coming up a little bit later on, after our Fact Check Friday segment, which is right now, we are going to be talking with Dr. Patrick Deneen, and we're going to be contrasting the new film, which is actually opening up this weekend, the Odyssey, and the actual story Homer gave us, but also the themes that can resonate deeply with Catholic spiritual life. And I also want to I don't know if he was able to get a sneak preview of it. Sometimes, depending on, a member of the media does get access to it. So we'll see. He does a lot of work with media and does a lot of interviews and whatnot. So we'll see. But it's really been receiving some bad reviews already, saying it's way too woke and that it's not very accurate. So we'll see what Dr. Deneen says. But most importantly, themes that resonate deeply with Catholic spiritual life. So he's coming up right after our 2 Cents segment. All right, so what I'd like to discuss this morning in Fact Check Friday is something known in the business of journalism as the sin of omission. And we even saw this last night. The president gave a national address at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and several of the major outlets either completely ignored it, or if they did run portions of it, they were very small portions. And what they did air were opposition pieces or op-ed pieces and interviews against what the president was claiming. Now, you can think that what the president said last night or any other time is propaganda, and maybe you don't buy it, whatever. But it's the president of the United States. I can't remember in my lifetime, especially in my 45 plus years now being in media, that a network has not chosen to air a presidential speech. That is one of the sins of omission, a very recent one. So what does that mean? What does it look like? Vital stories are ignored, despite their significance, okay? Major scandals, systemic injustices, public health crises, all kinds. Go back to COVID and think about how many stories were ignored, how much information was suppressed, because there was an agenda on the left in terms of COVID. Not that it wasn't serious, that's not what I'm saying. But certainly we did not and were not given all the information. So it's pretty scary when this happens, because we, as the media receiving public, people who view, listen to, follow media, should be given information. The Catechism says this, that we are entitled to truth. We are entitled to facts. If you go to the Catechism and just Google the use of social communications in the media, there's several paragraphs that are very clear about the fact that all of us, not just Catholics, deserve information based on truth. What a concept, right? So vital stories can be ignored, balance and perspectives are excluded, and context is greatly missing. And we see this a lot with the issue of transgender ideology. And Monday we're going to be having a very important interview with Dr. Teresa Farnan from the Ethics and Public Policy Center, and she's going to be talking about this as well. And case in point would be something that happened this week. I don't know if you heard about it. I didn't hear about it until I looked at a few different sites this morning, just brushing up on, preparing for the show. I found this story on newsbusters.org. The chancellor of a top California medical college refusing to acknowledge that biological males cannot give birth to babies when questioned at a House congressional hearing earlier this week. It was a House hearing on DEI in medical schools. Representative Mary Miller, a Republican from Illinois, and others pressed University of California chancellors on transgender ideology and other such DEI themes. We have seen this over and over again, where information about this ideology, and especially the stories of young men and women who are detransitioning now, the damage this so-called gender-affirming care has done to their lives, and not just temporarily, and not just psychologically, but physically. By their own admission, they are struggling on so many different levels. And there's not just one or two of them. There's more than just Chloe Cole, who's been very articulate in speaking out. There are literally thousands now of people. And where are their voices? How come they're not interviewed on a regular basis whenever these stories come up? And how come this story wasn't all over the news this week? Again, the sin of omission. And one of the reasons why the media do this is, as I said earlier, if they put out the truth, many with particular agendas are afraid the reality of the situation will wake people up and people won't continue to follow them or won't continue to buy what they're selling. And that, brothers and sisters, is a big part of the bottom line. So my wonderful producer, Richard, found a clip of this exchange between Representative Miller and one of the chancellors from the University of California, San Francisco, Chancellor Sam Hawgood, who avoided direct answers to questions about non-biological women and the issue of pregnancy. Take a listen.
We have a number of programs and initiatives in place to promote diversity and inclusion. It's clear that UICM is just hiding the fact that DEI is still its core mission. Dr. Haygood, UCSF's classroom guide titled Framework for Gender and Sex Concepts in Teaching advises against using the term pregnant women. Instead, it says to use pregnant people. Who are pregnant people compared to pregnant women? Just curious.
So that is a part of a curriculum to help our students who are facing a wide diversity of patients. Of course, the vast majority of pregnancies are in women, and I have absolutely no problem with using the word pregnant women. I use it myself.
Has a non-biological woman ever had a baby?
A transgender person can.
That's not a biological woman. Has a non-biological woman ever had a baby?
I would reiterate,
it's ridiculous.
We take care of transgender patients.
Dr. Hawgood, the UCSF guide I mentioned earlier also advises using a child's self-reported gender identity even if it conflicts with the parent's wishes. Say a 7-year-old boy comes into your doctor's office and reveals he believes he's a girl. Is UCSF advising physicians to explicitly violate parents' moral values and have the doctors address this boy as a girl?
Our programs are consistent with federal and state law. We undertake comprehensive psychological mental health evaluations and work with the parents on these issues.
Okay, and I hope that you are consistent with the law because, like I say, we have the right to withhold funding from any institution.
Did you catch that line? The vast majorities of pregnancies are in women. Gee, thanks for that. Not to mention, he says, I do admit this, and I have no problem saying it. He's trying to present himself as so balanced. This is how crazy this is, okay? The vast majority of pregnancies are in women, reality being denied. And this is the problem here with the sin of omission. It distorts public perception, allows policies or practices, bad ones, to persist, and reinforces more and more confusion and polarization. Unbelievable. And it happens all too often in today's secular media. We'll be right back. You've probably seen a lot of the trailers or the promotions or the film, The Odyssey, which actually opens up today, is in theaters this weekend. Opens up July 17th, this Friday. Yep. And we are going to be looking at the film, but more importantly, we have Dr. Patrick Deneen. You may have seen him last night, of course, on Raymond Arroyo's A World Over. We're going to be talking about his wonderful book, American Odyssey. And this is really, I think, very interesting and compelling, Patrick, to have the film and then have your book, because your book is looking at how the story of the Odyssey, the themes, can help us as Americans. But I know you haven't seen the film yet. It's just starting this week. I'm hearing that they took a lot of liberty with the story. What are you hearing, first of all, about the film?
Of course, it had a lot of
thanks for joining us. Sure, go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure to be here. Thank you. Yeah, it had a lot of sort of pre-publicity, previewing critiques, especially about the casting decisions, and I think one can raise a lot of questions about some of those. But people who have seen it, who were initially quite skeptical, that I've read, have said that it's a compelling film, at least insofar as the various episodes that Nolan decides to focus on are, powerfully filmed, as one would expect with Nolan. That he kind of tells a compelling story, which the Odyssey is, of course. And I think he keeps the main elements of essentially Odysseus seeking his homecoming, which is a very compelling theme. But of course, he has to leave a lot out because it's such a long and rich epic. And I have concerns about what's left out more than what I think might have been included. But I'll have to reserve judgment until I see the film.
So what do you think? I mean, I know this is what your book's about. What do you think we can learn as Catholics from the Odyssey?
Well, it's in many ways, the Odyssey, of course, is a book written long before the Incarnation, long before any anticipation of what a post-pagan or Christian world would look like. And yet, maybe providentially, already, we could say in the long Western tradition, certain ground is being prepared that led to and made then fruitful the Incarnation. And maybe, primary among those is that experience that certainly as Christians we understand the restlessness of the human heart. This is how, of course, Augustine opens his great confessions, my heart is restless until it rests in you, God. Mm-hmm. And in many ways, the Odyssey is about that restlessness of the human heart. Now, it can't be fulfilled in the Odyssey or in any text before the Incarnation, but it is pointing in that direction. And he yearns for something more than what this merely human world can give us, and yet understands that the effort, a desire to become more than a human, to become a god, is also forbidden to us. And so he's the first great figure in the Western literary tradition who writes a compelling story of this human longing for more, and maybe almost intuiting that lies beyond solely our human capacity.
And also in some ways, and there have been so many different versions, there was even a TV series many years ago, I'm trying to remember who the actor was who was in it, but based on the Odyssey. In many ways, it does teach us lessons about marriage and commitment, does it not? Yes, and of course I think this would be the other great compelling theme. Now, I wouldn't want to put forward Odysseus as the model husband, as we know he strays, both literally and figuratively on the way home, and of course this reflects, again, a pagan world. And yet he is you could say he represents a kind of fidelity that would have been rare in this world. And let's remember, the Trojan War is fought because of the infidelity of Helen. So the entire backdrop of this whole drama is ground in the perils of infidelity. The unfaithfulness of the marital vow actually leads to the conflagration of a kind of cosmic war. And if that vow, if the home is unsettled, and if peace doesn't reign in the home, this is reflected in the world more broadly. And the resolution of the Odyssey, of course, is when Odysseus finds his way finally back home, establishes peace and justice in his home, and the final, almost the final scene is him finally lying next to his wife in their marital bed, which he himself made. So it's a wonderful sort of, you could say, story arc, starting from Helen's infidelity all the way to the faithfulness of Penelope and Odysseus's sort of unwavering commitment to return to the side of Penelope. So it is one of the great lessons, again, a proto-Catholic lesson of the connection between a kind of the fidelity of the home and the peace in the cosmos. We're talking with Dr. Patrick J. Deneen, author of American Odyssey, when an ancient story reveals about our divided souls. So this, according to what I'm looking at in terms of the various different ways where you can get the book, including Amazon and other sites, it's coming out, your book is coming out the next few days, right? Or is it available already? No, it's actually released on July 21st, which just coincidentally is my birthday. Yes, my birthday, so it's a great birthday present for me. Yeah, well, happy early birthday. Now, I'm sure you're hoping, as a fellow author, that people are going to see this movie and pick up the book, or would you like them to pick up the book first and then see the film? What do you think is a better way to go in terms of getting the full essence of what you're trying to convey? Yeah. Well, the first thing they should do is read the Odyssey. That's the text, and then they can compare the movie against the film. But I think because of the strangeness of the Odyssey, its distance in time, the kind of how different the customs and the portrayals are, I hope that my book will be helpful, because what it really aims to do is to discuss famous episodes in the Odyssey, and connect them to very familiar stories in our own American experience. And what I really want to underscore in this book is that this very ancient, distant story is a story that's very familiar to us Americans, because it's a story about
we could say that pioneering spirit of Americans, but also that homecoming spirit of Americans. We are simultaneously creatures drawn out and also, I think, committed to our homes, our families, our places. And I think that story is the story of the Odyssey, and it's the American story as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've noticed a lot of the different videos that continue to surface as the World Cup is going to be wrapping up this weekend. And I think so many people from around the world coming in and staying in America for, let's say, longer than just a week, many of them staying for almost a full period to follow their favorite teams, they're discovering or rediscovering America and who we really are. And to me, that's very refreshing, and it's something that the media can't suppress because people are using their own platforms to talk about the country, and people are getting it, I think. Have you seen that? And how does that make you feel in what you're trying to say with your book? I think that has a lot of meaning, and there's some similarities there.
Yeah. Well, I was actually in Europe for about a month, even during the World Cup, and so I was reading a lot of this from Europe. And it is, of course, really striking that like our media, the mainstream media in Europe is very one-sided. It presents this sort of horror portrait of what life must be like in America. Many Europeans have said they'll never go to America because they're afraid of being abducted by ICE and so forth. You get these ridiculous sort of images of what present-day America is. And when really kind of ordinary people came, not the elites, but people who wanted to follow their soccer teams, they discovered what we all know. This is a place in which the people are friendly, genuine, open, caring, welcoming. This was, I think, a wonderful corrective to what's been, we could say a kind of an elite-driven narrative about America. And again, I think this reflects one theme that we can see in the Odyssey, which is this kind of openness to discovery, but connected to a commitment to our places, our tradition, our home, who we are as a people. Mm-hmm. And I think that dual element of our own, as I say, our divided soul, is something that's familiar to anyone who visits our country and sees in America a kind of continuity of the Western tradition.
Mm-hmm. And you think of the struggles that so many people have gone through in this country to not only build their own lives, but also to help build this country, right?
Oh, sure, yeah. What I think is really remarkable about thinking about the Odyssey in relation to America is that everyone, of some number of generations who's been here can at least trace back to some forebear, their journey here, what it took to get here, the enormous courage and kind of entrepreneurship it took to get here. And I think that's an element clearly of our country that's in many ways lacking in other countries, certainly in Europe today. But also that people came here not just to get away from somewhere else, but to make a home here, to set down roots, to settle here. And that's, you could say, the two images of America. It's one of the American cultural artifacts I talk about in the book is The Wizard of Oz, which portrays, of course, its heroine, Dorothy, as someone who both longs to go somewhere over the rainbow, but also by the end of the film
wants to come home.
Is saying that there's no place like home. And I think that is, in some ways, you could say, the essence of America. It seems paradoxical and even contradictory, just as it is in the Odyssey. But in fact, that is the essence of America. And we shouldn't try to deny one or the other. That's exactly who we are. We boldly go where no man has gone before. And when we get there, we set up a home. That's what we are. Yeah. That's what we do.
What a great book, Doctor, for right now, for this very important, celebration that we're having in the country for 250 years.
Yeah, this is the reason I wrote it. I actually, many years ago, wrote a very academic book about the Odyssey, which nobody read. It's
nobody read.
Intended for other scholars. But I've of course been thinking about the Odyssey for a long time, and I thought, well, there's the two things happening in July, seemingly entirely coincidental, but in my mind, wonderfully, maybe providentially connected, which of course was the celebration of America's 250th birthday, as well as the release of this movie. And I thought, well, why don't I talk about some of my favorite films, Field of Dreams, It's a Wonderful Life, some of my favorite books, Huckleberry Finn, Wizard of Oz, which is both a book and a film, and connect these to this film event and connect it to our own birthday and show the ways that when we talk about the Western tradition, well, here's one of the oldest books in the Western tradition, And it tells us a lot about who we are as Americans. And so we're part of that long tradition. And I just wanted to make that visible to people who are interested in making this connection themselves.
I know you're an expert at research and whatnot, but it sounds like you had a lot of fun sitting down and writing this book.
I did. I so enjoyed this. I think I took about 4 months to write this book, which is not my usual pace. I really had a great time doing it. And I've already asked my publisher that if a paperback comes out, can I add some more? Because there's just so many things that one could talk about in that connecting these themes that I explore and the American experience. So there's so much more to talk about, but I'm just glad it was able to come out just around the time that this film came out as well.
Well, I'd love to have you back on after you see the film and what you think in terms of how it relates to your book and what else we can learn, and because there's so much to draw from this. And also, I loved your comment about our own heritage. I remember the first time we went to my grandfather's hometown in southern Italy, in the middle of the forest, about 2 hours south of Naples, and thinking about how when he was 14 years old, Patrick, that he had to find his way to Naples on his own and take this ship by himself across to New York, and thinking about that. And you think, of the Odyssey and the journey, right? And all the struggles he must have had. Didn't have a car. He probably went, hitchhike or walked half the way, and then, was probably picked up by somebody somewhere and, taken the rest of the way. But the struggles of all of us and the history of our individual families is something, that's so important. Thank you. This has been really interesting, and I think very uplifting. And do you think you could come on after you see the film maybe in a couple of weeks?
I'd love to. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm actually seeing it this afternoon, and I'm sure I will, as they say, I'm sure I will have thoughts after I see it.
Deep thoughts, I'm sure, too. Dr. Patrick Deneen has been our guest, author of American Odyssey, and you can also see him, of course, if you want to check out Raymond's show last night, The World Over. He's also going to be on Raymond's podcast as well. We'll be right back on a Friday. Stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in on a Friday morning and every day here, Monday through Friday at EWTN's Catholic Connection. Coming up in hour number 2 on EWTN's Radio Extra, we are going to get an update on a major case out of California, a major lawsuit against Heartbeat International. So before we do the interview with Paul Jonna, who's special counsel at the wonderful Thomas More Society, I do want to talk a little bit more about the great work of pregnancy resource centers. They don't get enough publicity. That's another story, another big sin of omission by the secular media. I remember there was a story that broke in Detroit. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. It was a local pregnancy center by our house, and it was right after the Dobbs decision, and there was a lot. Well, Dobbs is what, 2024? I can't remember. No, 22, I think. Anyway, I digress. Anyway, there was a lot of graffiti. They basically went and did all kinds of property damage. They even went to a board member's home, who happened to be in our parish, by the way, and did some serious damage to their windows and to their driveway and whatnot. And that was the first time I had seen a pregnancy resource center shown locally in a positive way in the news. The reporter, thanks be to God, actually had the wherewithal and enough balance to be objective and went inside and talked to the director of the Pregnancy Resource Center and showed all this great video of all the wonderful activities going on, the store where women and families can come in and get free items, free high chairs, clothes, bottles, diapers, everything, and was able to talk about what they do. Doesn't happen often enough. We'll discuss next hour, along with an update on the big Heartbeat International case. Hour number 2 of Catholic Connection coming your way on a Friday.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And it is hour number 2 on a Friday. Great to be with you, Catholic Connection, EWTN's Catholic Connection, more specifically. And we have a wonderful second hour for you. Of course, we have all your news and your weather and all that good stuff. We're also going to take a deep dive into the great work of pregnancy resource centers around the country. And thanks be to God, they outnumber independent abortion mills. They do so much great work. And as I was saying in the first hour regarding the media's sin of omission, to me, this is one of the biggest sins of the secular media when they are covering stories that impact the pro-life movement. If they're talking about abortion, if, let's say, there's a lawsuit, as we're going to be discussing after 2 Cents with Paul Jonna, if there's a lawsuit against a pro-life organization, they fail to actually describe accurately what the pro-life organization does, especially when it comes to pregnancy resource centers. So I thought I would give them a lot of credit, because credit is due, a great deal of it, to these wonderful, wonderful organizations that support women and families around the country, including the beautiful ministry of Heartbeat International. I've known the founder, the original founder, who's now retired. Well, she says she's retired, but she's still working really hard in the pro-life movement, Peggy Hartshorn, who's been such a gift to the pro-life community. We go back a long time. I've interviewed her countless times on this show, countless times at the March for Life. Just a phenomenal witness to life. And there are Peggy's everywhere, and I know she would say this if she were with us this morning, across the country that are doing similar work, wonderful work, making a difference, not just in saving babies, which is huge, right? But also with saving families by saving the babies. So we'll talk about that in 2 Cents. And then, speaking of Heartbeat and pregnancy resource centers, Paul Jonna is going to give us an update on this very big case regarding the California lawsuit against Heartbeat International, and how's that going? We'll get an update. Weather-wise, we are looking at flooding that continues to threaten portions of Texas, and there's really bad air quality in the Great Lakes through the Mid-Atlantic. So here's more detail on the weather forecast for you this morning. Widespread life-threatening flash and urban flooding continuing in south central Texas, with considerable flooding impacting possible areas across central Texas as well. And then we have that wildfire smoke impacting air quality across much of the Great Lakes region into southern New England and the Mid-Atlantic. And then there's also monsoon-type thunderstorms that could be produced and isolated to scattered flashing flooding across the southwest into the Great Basin. So pretty crazy weather out there, pretty crazy summer weather-wise. But we feel your pain here in Italy. We're at 100 degrees right now, and it's 403 actually. It's been a really bad heat wave here as well. Normally, it's, I would say, upper 80s, low 90s in Italy at this time of year. So we're about 10 degrees above normal. It's been like that all over the globe, actually, parts of Europe and the United States. But we will get through it. And thanks be to God, we always have EWTN. So let's get started with the news. It is 3 minutes past the hour on EWTN's Radio Extra. Well, shortly after that euthanasia law was adopted in France earlier this week, the Catholic Church there expressed regret over what it described as a choice that breaks with the country's long-standing tradition of health care, and whose mission is to relieve suffering and accompany every person until the natural end of life. Vatican News now reporting the bishops are recalling they had taken part in discussions throughout the 4-year debate, emphasizing the Church's centuries-long experience in caring for the sick, the dying, and their families. And they say they are insisting now that they are not giving up, and in their view, the matter is not over, as several significant, they say, legal avenues remain open to them. The bishops say great vigilance is required, and the task is to move forward, especially by safeguarding the real freedom of healthcare institutions, ensuring respect for their ethical charters, and closely supporting all the legal appeals. International Christian Concern is warning that religious freedom is facing growing pressure around the world. The ICC's 2026 Global Persecution Index, examining persecution in more than 20 countries while also raising concerns about restrictions on religious expression in parts of the West. The report identifying Nigeria as the deadliest country for Christians, criticizing governments in China, India, and Nicaragua over actions affecting religious minorities and Christian communities. It also alleges China is using surveillance technology to monitor religious groups beyond its own borders. ICC says millions of Christians continue to face persecution because of their faith, and it's urging greater awareness and action. President Trump says he's declassifying evidence that shows the American election system is vulnerable to interference and fraud. In a primetime address from the White House last night, the president said China exploited weaknesses in our voting system to then gain access to 220 million U.S. voters' files.
Over a period of years, starting during the 2020 election cycle, the People's Republic of China carried out what is believed to be the largest compromise of election data in history.
Trump saying China hacked our systems and projected its influence into the 2020 election. He also added that a deep state within the U.S. government fought to keep China's actions hidden from the American public. The president said China's efforts were an attempt to keep him out of power, and he singled out the Biden administration for hiding the information, adding he's asked the FBI to investigate what was uncovered. He also says the White House has published a new election integrity website that discloses these documents. The White House also says talks are continuing between the U.S. and Iran. The press secretary Caroline Leavitt saying yesterday the recent U.S. strikes on Iran were because they violated the Memorandum of Understanding.
They have expressed they still want to make a deal to the president. We're talking to them, but again, the president is not going to allow them to fire on ships in the Strait without paying a consequence for that.
She added Iran's recent actions prove President Trump's initial decision to launch Operation Epic Fury was right. This after the U.S. conducted strikes in northern Iran yesterday, and American forces also intercepted a ship that was allegedly attempting to break the naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's military saying it would target all U.S. infrastructure in the region if Trump carries out threats he made to attack Iranian infrastructure. Inspired by the Pope's encyclical Magnificat Humanitas, Deborah Castellano-Luboff with Vatican News reports more than 200 leading academics, innovators, and Nobel laureates signed a special peace declaration in Rome yesterday.
Luboff reports.
The signing of the Rome Declaration on Nuclear Weapons and Artificial Intelligence took place on Thursday at Rome's Capitoline Hill, bringing to a close the Global Nobel Laureates Assembly on Artificial Intelligence and Nuclear War. The declaration was signed by Nobel laureates, international experts, scientists, religious leaders, and former heads of state and government. The appeal calls for renewed international cooperation in response to the challenges posed by nuclear weapons, AI, autonomous weapons, and new digital technologies. The assembly, held on July 14th and 15th at Borgo Laudato Si in the Pontifical Gardens of Castel Gandolfo, gathered more than 200 leading figures and representatives of international research institutions working in the fields of peace and AI. The event was inspired by the Pope's encyclical Magnificat Humanitas. During the final session at Rome's City Hall, speakers reflected on the risks facing humanity today. Professor Daniel Holtz of the University of Chicago said the world is experiencing a time of unprecedented danger, but added that there are concrete steps that can be taken to make society safer from nuclear weapons and AI. Cardinal Baldorena said that the declaration comes at a moment marked by rapid transformation and serious risks, including AI, nuclear weapons, geopolitical instability, and the crisis of multilateralism. He stressed that decisions concerning life and death, peace and war must remain under meaningful human control. Father Andrea Ciucci of the Pontifical Academy for Life also reflected on human ingenuity, noting that AI and nuclear power demonstrate how human creativity can be used either to build or to destroy.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio is sounding the alarm on far-left political terrorism, the secretary issuing his warning during the opening of a State Department summit yesterday, attended by roughly 65 foreign delegations, saying the threat has not been taken seriously enough.
Even today, the very idea that far-left terrorism could be a serious threat is treated as a right-wing fever dream, or worse, as a dangerous fascist conspiracy.
Rubio says far-left terrorism has carried out different slogans and ideologies over the years.
They can call themselves anti-capitalist or anti-imperialist or communist or anarchist or Marxist, but the fundamental character is always the same. It's always the same. It is a poisonous resentment cloaked in the language of equality.
He urged attendees to see global counterterrorism as a priority, Rubio saying the administration is rebuilding U.S. counterterrorism strategy around what it views as an increasingly transnational threat, arguing that the nation, along with its allies, must respond by expanding intelligence sharing, law enforcement cooperation, and efforts to disrupt terrorist financing. And 2 men accused of helping plan an attack on the White House UFC attack plot are pleading not guilty. Tyson Proper and Chandler Skaggs are each charged, along with 6 others, with conspiracy to provide material support to terrorists, as well as conspiracy to commit murder on federal government territory and to murder a federal government official. And there's a remembrance ceremony, as Scott Pringle tells us, taking place in New York this evening on the 30th anniversary of the TWA Flight 800 crash.
The Boeing 747 heading for Paris crashed into the Atlantic Ocean off Long Island just 12 minutes after taking off from JFK Airport. All 230 on board died. Witness Jill Saltzman spoke to NBC about it shortly after.
We see a red flash of fire, like we couldn't believe, come down into the ocean.
NBC anchor Chuck Scarborough.
The Coast Guard has confirmed it is removing bodies from the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Long Island.
The National Transportation Safety Board says a possible cause was an explosion of the fuel tank, likely caused by a short circuit. In New York, I'm Scott Pringle.
At least 2 people are dead as major flash flooding is hitting parts of Texas Hill Country and Big Bend regions. In his latest briefing on Thursday, the governor, Greg Abbott, outlining some of the measures that have already been taken to keep people safe.
We've deployed more than 85 boats and 21 aircraft, more than 200 high-profile vehicles. We've already made more than 230 rescues.
South Central Texas has been battered by heavy rain since Monday night, with over 2 million people still facing the threat of additional rounds of torrential rain throughout the day today. And the CDC, as Mark Mayfield tells us, now reportedly zeroing in on 2 California companies as the potential source behind the multi-state outbreak as a nasty intestinal illness.
The Washington Post says health officials are investigating shredded iceberg lettuce supplied to Taco Bell by Taylor Farms. Taco Bell is based in Irvine and Taylor Farms is based in Salinas. The CDC says there have been thousands of confirmed cases of the illness that's called cyclosporiasis. It's shown up in 34 states, but there are large clusters of cases in 4 states: Michigan, Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky. I'm Mark Mayfield.
And the Canadian wildfire smoke blanketing the entire state of Michigan has pushed Detroit's air quality index to over 500, when anything over 300 is hazardous. And for Desiree Durso, who's visiting from California, this is something she was not ready for.
Not quite like this. This is pretty intense.
Now, air quality numbers between 0 and 30 are considered good. More than 100 million people in the U.S., meanwhile, are dealing with potentially unhealthy air as the smoke from those wildfires in Canada continue to blanket larger parts of the nation. At least 17 states in all are facing health advisories brought on by the smoke from the Midwest to the Mid-Atlantic. It's forecast to keep heading south today into more of the Midwest, Appalachia, and East Coast, while things start to improve in the north. Storms are forecast for Saturday in the upper Midwest and Northeast, could help clear things up. Wildfire smoke can be dangerous for sensitive people, especially the young, the elderly, and those with health conditions. It is a Friday. Thanks for tuning in to EWTN's Catholic Connection, hour number 2 on EWTN Radio Extra. Welcome back, Catholic Connection. Great to be with you on a Friday morning. So coming up, we're going to be giving you an update from wonderful Thomas More Society regarding the case against the beautiful ministry Heartbeat International. And I thought, in light of our Fact Check Friday this morning, where we talked about the sin of omission and what you don't hear in the media, and how I highlighted something that happened this week in Congress that didn't get a lot of play, but a very important story, more on transgender ideology, I thought we could look at the sin of omission as it pertains to this issue of life in the news and in the media, because this is a huge case, and the case itself outside of Catholic and Christian media is not getting a lot of play. But we'll have Paul fill us in. But how many of you know, if you think about it right now, how many of you know where your local pregnancy resource is in your neighborhood? Think about that. In my hometown of Metro Detroit, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 within a 10 of 5, if I count the one a little bit north of us, at least 5 within a 5 to 20 mile radius from our home. And obviously, I do a lot of work in the pro-life movement, interview a lot of pro-life people, so I may have more access to the information than most. But it's not that difficult. You can look up Pregnancy Resource Center in my area. It'll pop up on Google. And we should all know where they are. We should all know what they do. We should all be willing to support them in prayer and, if possible, financially with money, because they do so much good. And this is another story, again, since we're talking about the sin of omission, that the media don't cover. And if they do cover it, it's in the midst of a crisis situation, right? So what do I mean? Well, I was briefly mentioning at the very, very top of the last hour, until we hit the break, about a situation that occurred in the Detroit area after the Dobbs decision. One of our wonderful resource centers, literally 2 miles from our house, received a lot of damage from anti-abortion activists. They put all kinds of graffiti on the side of the pregnancy center. They damaged, I think, some windows. And then they went after board members. And they were able to find out where they lived. And they went to one of the homes of one of the board members, who, as I said earlier, was a member of our parish and still is, and did some damage to her front window, to her garage, to her driveway, where they sprayed graffiti and broke a window. It was quite frightening. And so it was big news. There was a lot going on, if you remember, after the Dobbs decision, where the left was losing their mind over this when Roe v. Wade was overturned. And so the media actually went to the Pregnancy Resource Center and spoke to the director. And she had, thanks be to God. And what's interesting is this reporter was an intern with me when I was a reporter at Channel 50. And so maybe she learned something during that time, hopefully, when she served there, because she went inside and talked to the director. And not only did she talk to the director to get their side of the story of what happened, the damage, what it was going to cost to get things fixed, the who, what, where, when, why, and how, she showed beautiful video of the inside of the center. She showed the store with all the adorable baby clothes hanging up neatly, the different baby products, the diapers, the bottles, the different types of furniture that were available, all for free for a family to come in and receive. And she specifically mentioned what they do at the resource center in terms of giving women ultrasounds, giving them information, giving them help medically if they needed it. And yes, even giving them the state law regarding abortion. And so this is why this case with Heartbeat is so interesting, because those who are going after them are claiming that they're misinforming, they're giving out bad information about the abortion pills, and on and on and on. And it's incredible to me that these big money abortion operations are going after these pregnancy centers, which receive $0, by the way, from the federal government, and operate all on fundraising and donations. So Heartbeat International is incredible, absolutely incredible. They have an amazing story, and you can check them out, heartbeatinternational.org. And I've known the founders and the foundress for a very long time. It's just incredible work, and they care so much about women and about families and about the whole picture. Because as we know, one of the misconceptions is how pro-lifers only care about the baby. They don't care about the mom. And it's actually a case of projection, because it's the other side that doesn't care about anybody but the bottom line. And certainly doesn't care about the women, because they don't give them all the information about what's happening in their body and the type of service that's available to them. So what exactly do pregnancy resource centers offer? Well, they offer a wide range of free and confidential services to support individuals during unexpected pregnancies, including pregnancy testing and ultrasounds, counseling and guidance on pregnancy options, material support, as I mentioned earlier, maternity clothing, diapers, baby gear, other essentials, parenting programs and mentorship for both mothers and fathers, including support groups and life skills training. Now, the other support that they give in many cases is they're connected to places that even offer shelter for women who need, let's say they get kicked out of the home, in terms of someone comes to them and says, well, you either get an abortion or we're going to kick you out, such as a parent, or maybe even a friend, or in many cases a husband or a boyfriend. A little bit more information. Pregnancy Help Centers are life-affirming nonprofit service providers that provide women who have an unexpected pregnancy with alternatives to abortion. Their services often include, again, free pregnancy tests, consultation, ultrasounds, material support, education, information on adoption, and yes, abortion, and services and referrals for ongoing pregnancy and parenting needs. There are approximately 2,750 PHCs or pregnancy health centers in the U.S. serving women and their families every day with, get this, a 99% satisfactory rating from clients. Centers that additionally provide limited medical care under the supervision of a licensed medical doctor and director and can be called pregnancy medical centers. Now, their service include pregnancy tests, ultrasounds, prenatal care, STI, STD testing, and listen to this. Three quarters of pregnancy resource centers or health centers fall into this category. So see how easy it is to get caught up in the language of the left and the secular media, which in terms of how the people in the media feel about abortion, it's over the top in support of abortion. How you're not getting the full story about what pregnancy centers really do. It's the pregnancy centers that are giving women the help, the information, the guidance that they need. I challenge anyone to go to an abortion mill just for an investigative purpose, or pick up the phone and call one of them and ask them what kind of support. If I decide to keep my baby, will you help me? Will you help me with diapers? Will you help me with furniture? Will you help me with, gosh, I don't know, a ride to the doctor's office? You know what they'll do? They'll send you across the street to the Pregnancy Resource Center. And yet, Heartbeat International, which is an umbrella group connected to so many pregnancy help centers around the country, is being sued with those who are suing, claiming they're putting out false information and hurting, not helping women. We'll discuss that next. The bench trial in People versus Heartbeat International began late last month, June 24th, in Alameda County Superior Court, and is continuing. Talking to us this morning is Paul Jonna, special counsel at the Thomas More Society, who's very, very involved in this case, with an update on the lawsuit. Paul, if you could, I know you joined us early on, but give us just the premise for the lawsuit and also how things are going. Appreciate you joining us this morning.
Great to be with you, Teresa. Thank you. Yes, so basically, the California Attorney General decided to file a unfair competition or false advertising case against Heartbeat International and Real Options in state court in California. And essentially, they're saying it's false and misleading to tell women about abortion pill reversal. And of course, it's a ridiculous case on multiple levels. First and foremost, it's pretty amazing that they don't even have a woman victim in the case. The case is brought on behalf of the people of the state of California. They have not identified any women who have been harmed, any women who have been deceived. It is a case just brought by the Attorney General, and essentially he's saying women shouldn't even get to hear about abortion pill reversal because he doesn't think there's enough studies showing it's safe and effective when in fact there's a whole series of studies showing it's safe and effective, and there's a lot of evidence supporting all the claims that Heartbeat and Real Options make. And, the information is given to women for free, and it's truthful and accurate, and it's resulted in, I think 8,000 plus babies being saved. So it's a very, the case is just so legally untenable. It's incredible that we're in this trial, but the trial is going very well. The state's experts have been cross-examined and I think thoroughly discredited. We've had witnesses. So far, we've had a number of our witnesses testify, and I think their testimony has been compelling. So both on the facts and the law, I think the case is shaping up quite well, and we are cautiously optimistic. But we still have a couple more weeks.
Mm-hmm. So as I was mentioning during the break and in researching on your website, you do a great job of keeping us up to date on what's happening with these major cases. And people can find an update, and there is a link to it in the slideshow at thomasmoresociety.org. And the summary notes 10 moments from the court that raised serious questions about the testimony from the AG filing the case. And so can you, I know we probably won't have time to go through all 10, but can you go through a few of these in terms of the problems with their case?
Well, so that referred to their lead expert. So the state's primary expert is this abortion doctor, Mitchell Crennan. And Dr. Crennan has been somewhat obsessed with APR, abortion pill reversal. He did a study in 2020 to try to show it doesn't work. And in fact, his own study, which he stopped early, actually showed it does work. And we found out that he's actually one of the world's leading researchers on the abortion pill and mifepristone, and we got all of his emails. We subpoenaed them from his study and all the records underlying his study. We found out that there's actually lots of fraudulent components to his own study, and we found out that he misstated several important elements, including telling the public that it was a double-blind study. We found out from internal emails that his own pharmacy team said, actually, this is not really going to be double blind. The pills don't look anything alike in his randomized control trial. So we found out that was not true. We found out that he had private thoughts about how effective the abortion pill was that he didn't share with the public. He told the public, well, we don't really know how effective it is. It could be, there could be a survival rate of up to 40 or 50%. We don't know. The reason why that's important is because we're saying the abortion pill reversal has a 64 to 68% success rate, and that's a relevant number if you know how effective the first pill is alone. If the first pill is highly effective and only like 8%, for example, of pregnancies survive after the first pill, then that's a very big difference, 8% and 64%. So, but he publicly would say, well, it could be as high as 40 or 50, but we have private emails where this leading researcher, he's one of 4 paid consultants for Danco, the manufacturer of mifepristone, got a private email where he said, you know what, we've looked at all the data, it's most likely just an 8% survival rate. And so he had to answer for that, and there was really no good answer. This is actually probably the most significant thing, in his own study where he tried to divide up, he had a placebo group and a treatment group, and it was a very unethical trial. These were all women who wanted to get abortions anyway. And he said, all right, just delay your surgical abortions. We'll give you mifepristone, and then half of you will be in a placebo group, and the other half will get progesterone. And we'll see if APR really works. Well, he stopped the study early, he said, because of severe bleeding. And we found out that even in his study, which he stopped, 4 out of 5 women in the progesterone group had continuing pregnancies, and 2 out of 5 in the placebo group had continuing pregnancy. So his small study, which he stopped early, showed, well, the women did a lot better with progesterone. But in addition, he said he stopped it because of severe bleeding. And the bleeding was supposedly in 3 of those women. 2 of them, we always knew, were in the placebo group. He claimed 1 of them was in the progesterone group. So we got all the records from this woman's ER visit to find out what really happened. Did she really suffer severe bleeding? It turned out, after we looked at all the records and our experts reviewed them, she just had a regular miscarriage. So he called it a severe hemorrhage in the study.
Wow.
And that was used to say that APR can be very dangerous and it can result in severe hemorrhage. And this was used by ACOG, the leading obstetrics group, to say that you have to be very careful because APR, stopping your abortion, and even if you take progesterone, you can get a severe hemorrhage. We found out there's 0 evidence in all this woman's records that she suffered a severe hemorrhage. It was just a regular miscarriage. So that was a very significant element that we exposed to.
Wow. So this sounds like a slam dunk case, but it's never that easy, is it?
Oh, no. It is, objectively speaking, and I'm being as objective as I can, it is a slam dunk case. First of all, we should have never been in this trial. The First Amendment protects all the speech. It's not commercial speech. This is free information given to women on a very, very important subject. So we should have never been in trial to begin with. But even if you get to the science and you're looking at the studies, every study, you have there's a lot of small studies, and then there's a very big study, and they consistently show the same thing, which is that APR is effective and that it's safe. So whether you're looking at the First Amendment or you're looking at the science, it's a clear-cut case. Now we're giving it all we got. We got a team of smart lawyers, and we're not taking anything for granted. So we're gonna, we have a couple more weeks left here, and then we'll see how it goes. And we're not gonna, stop here. If we need to appeal, we'll appeal all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. It's a very important case.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It is a huge case. How important is the venue of this case, Paul?
Well, the Attorney General filed it in Alameda County in Oakland. We have a fair judge, and we're hoping that he can, that we're going to persuade him. Obviously, that's what we're hoping on the legal issues here, and so he's been. The trial's been going well. I mean, we have, no reason to think that we won't have a fair trial so far, and so we're going to proceed and just do our best here. But since this case raises really important constitutional issues. After we exhaust any appeals in state court, we will have the opportunity to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. So, if that's necessary, and we're hoping it won't be.
How long do you think the case will last?
Well, the case was filed in 2023, and now we're in 2026 in trial. There's probably a couple more weeks in trial. It might take a few months to get a final decision after trial concludes, and then, any appeals will take a few years after that if there are appeals.
We will discuss more detail on this very important case when we come back. We're talking with Paul Jonna from the Thomas More Society. Stay tuned. Thomas More Society can be found online at thomasmoresociety.org. And in the slideshow, there are several different links to various cases that they're handling right now, including the case involving Heartbeat International, whom they're representing. Paul, this is just, it's as you said, we were chatting during the break, and by the way, we're talking with Special Counsel Paul Jonna. It's downright evil. And of course, the whole abortion industry and the whole act of abortion we know is intrinsically evil. But to go after Heartbeat International, it's such a case of projection, speaking of the word case, when you look at legal terms, because they're accusing us of doing exactly what they're doing. They accuse us of lying to women, giving misinformation, causing harm, and everything that they are accusing the pro-life movement of and have been accusing us for years, they do in spades.
Yeah, it's incredible. We started making a list of all the ironies, and that's one of them, which is this is a case supposedly about false advertising and misinformation. But, when a woman takes the first pill at the abortion clinic and she has regrets, we hear this all the time. They say, well, if you don't finish your abortion, you're going to have a deformed baby. You can't stop. I mean, they literally lie to them about what would happen if they stopped. So, yeah, it's completely... the ironies are just staggering. There's so many on different levels. But what they're trying to do to Heartbeat and Real Options through this case, I don't think we talked about this, but they want $20 million in fines against Heartbeat and almost another $1 million against Real Options. I mean, these organizations do a lot more than just APR. Real Options is it's got 4 or 5 local clinics. They serve low-income individuals primarily, and they do incredible work in the local community there in the Bay Area. They'd rather see them shut down. I mean, it's terrible what they're trying to do. These amazing organizations.
In one sense, it is very revealing, and we were also discussing this during the break, that why would they even want to bother, considering the size and the financial backing that the abortion industry has? Why would they even want to bother with Heartbeat and Real Options or other pregnancy resource outlets? I mean, we're, the David and Goliath situation.
Yeah, so after the Dobbs decision, which reversed, Roe versus Wade, they formed a reproductive rights task force in California. And it was this group's job to do everything they could to push back and to make, I guess this was the first case they filed, and it was the only, they had to do something, this committee, this new group that was formed, and they said, let's go after abortion pill reversal. What we've learned is that this notion that women experience abortion regret is really offensive to them. They don't want this out there. They don't want women to know that this is a thing. That seems to be part of this as well. We've seen some evidence of that's just this narrative that women may regret their abortions is something they're not comfortable having out there. And so that's part of I think, why they're focused on this, but it's a very real thing. And by the way, the irony, again, is that this is the side that claims to be pro-choice. And this is the side that claims to be in favor of a woman having the right to choose what to do with her own body. These are women who, a lot of them are coerced into taking the first pill by family members. It's tragic. We've heard the stories over and over again. And they have decided, to stop this abortion. They decided they want to continue the pregnancy. So you would think they'd support a woman's right to choose, but apparently, it only goes one way for them.
Well, we know with the studies that have been done, the Elliott Institute has done an excellent job of documenting this, as well as the Charlotte Lozier Institute, in terms of the high percentage, extremely high percentage of women who have abortions don't choose it. They choose it because they feel they have no choice. Right.
They feel they have no choice, or a lot of times there's a boyfriend or
there's a
partner,
pressure, so they don't have a choice. They're being forced into it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And so what about your witnesses? I know you've had some excellent experts that have been testifying, correct?
Yes. And actually, on Monday, Dr. Delgado, the founder of Abortion Pill Reversal, will be testifying, and he's going to have some powerful testimony. His study in 2018 is the largest study of its kind, and so that's going to be a big focus, because they're trying to, their whole case centers around, well, the study's not perfect. It has this problem and that problem. You can't rely on that study. So I think an important issue to establish will be this is a well-designed study. It has a large data set, important conclusions, and I think when the judge hears from Dr. Delgado, it'll be very compelling, because he's a very smart, very credible witness, and so he's going to be testifying. But we've also had moms that went through APR. We've had one. We have a few others coming up, and they told that, like the one that testified recently, Erica Carrillo, described exactly what happened to her. She was coerced into taking the first pill by her then boyfriend, and immediately had regrets and looked for options. She was connected with real options, and she told the court how they treated her. They were compassionate. They were reassuring. They gave her hope. They gave, ultimately, after she, by the grace of God, carried her pregnancy to term, had her baby boy, they gave her maternity clothes, baby clothes. They were there for her. They treated her like family. They didn't charge her a dime. And so these are the women that the court will be hearing from.
And the other side has not put forth any witnesses, especially female witnesses, right?
They have found nobody. Not one woman has come forward claiming to have been harmed by this. And it's just the Attorney General's office lawyers and their experts who are really essentially the plaintiffs in this case. It's really just amazing to me that this is even a case. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that it results in a verdict in favor of heartbeat and real options. But it's quite amazing that they filed a consumer fraud case, a false advertising case, with no defrauded or harmed consumers.
How can that be if what they claim, and I know the answer to this, I'm just speaking this out loud so people understand how egregious this whole situation is, how evil it is. If they're claiming that women were harmed, you would think there would be women running to the AG's office. You would think there would be cases or complaints that have already been filed about abortion pill reversal, right? They should have people lined up outside the court ready to testify if this is such a big issue.
Exactly. And if you look at how they calculate this $20 million in penalties, the women who actually successfully carry their pregnancies to term, they are claiming those women were harmed because they were supposedly given false information. So, like, if you look at how they tally the $20 million in penalties, Erica Carrillo, who testified, she'd be one of the women that was part of this group of women that were harmed. Like, every successful reversal, they're saying, is a woman who was defrauded. So, it's just complete nonsense, to be honest.
Well, it's all politics. It's all politics and political pressure and money, right?
Exactly. And the California Department of Justice has a $1.6 billion budget. There are serious things in California they could be doing with that money to, all kinds of problems. And here we are. They've got this massive 6-week trial going on in Oakland over something that's, completely ridiculous that this is even the case. So this just shows you how they use their budget in California.
It is 46 minutes past the hour on a Friday morning, July 17th. Catching up with Paul Jonna, special counsel at the Thomas More Society, giving us a very detailed and important update on this huge case filed against the amazing folks at Heartbeat International. It is so evil because I was saying, I know you heard part of my 2-cent segment. I have been interviewing Peggy Hartshorn and other people involved in Heartbeat, literally, Paul, for decades. Wow. Since I've been on the air. I've been on the air in this show for 24 years. I can't think of more dedicated, more honest, more hardworking people who really care about women and families. It's so evil what's going on here.
And I think that's coming through in this case. And like I said, we're doing everything we can to get a win at the trial court level. But if that's not the case, then we're going to make sure I'm quite confident they will ultimately prevail. Just a matter of whether it needs to be done on appeal or not. But yes, I think that's coming through in this case loud and clear. So
let's talk a little bit about media coverage or lack thereof that you're seeing on this out there in the West Coast. But you would think that the media would be jumping on this. But I can tell you right now the reason they're not is because there aren't any compelling witnesses they can interview. Yeah, there's no. Like I said, their lead witness, their expert, was, I think, thoroughly discredited, and there's really nothing to report on if you're on their side of this case. It's not. I would say it's not going well for them. But why hasn't it got broader media coverage? I don't know. It's hard to say. I do think there's a lot at stake here because this is not just a California case. They're trying to. They have a parallel case in New York. The blue states attorneys general are coordinating on this. They tried banning APR in Colorado. They lost, thankfully, and that case was thrown out. So they've got this case in California. They got a case in New York. I mean, they're just trying to. There's obviously a nationally coordinated strategy aimed at stopping women from just learning about abortion pill reversal. So why hasn't it gotten more attention? Well, it's not the most common thing. Also, I mean, abortion pill reversal is it's important. It's something that I think is more increasingly important now as more women are unfortunately more abortions are happening through chemical abortion. So it's a issue of growing importance, but I think that's probably part of the reason why you're not hearing a lot about it. It's not. No, I think and that's true, but I think another reason is the media don't want people to know about abortion pill reversal because the media, and this goes back decades, and I've got this in my first book, Noise, the statistics show that the media are, by and large, totally in on abortion, 100% in on abortion, and they are in cahoots working with, in terms of the messaging, with the Planned Parenthoods of the world. I mean, there's evidence of study after study. I'm not speaking, just making this up. This is solid research that's out there in terms of the way the media cover abortion. It is the sin of omission that I've been talking about this morning. They don't want people to know about abortion pill reversal because that hurts the bottom line of the abortion industry. Exactly. And after this failed study by their expert, Dr. Gagnon, we know that they had this, because it was such a unusual outcome where he actually proved it works, they had to have a private meeting in D.C. with communications experts, with media experts, with ACOG, and with Planned Parenthood, all to discuss how are we going to message the results of this study. And we have all their talking points from that meeting, and it's exactly what you're saying. They are manipulating the data. They're trying to, create a narrative. It's very coordinated, and it's just incredible when you see the level of coordination. And I think there was 20-something organizations represented at this D.C. meeting just on how to spin the results of this failed study. It's incredible. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So how do you, as an attorney, sit through this and listen to this nonsense without losing, your temper, or in my case, I would lose my mind? Well, our team is we're focused on, the legal strategy, making sure we have excellent products. We're obviously staying close to the sacraments. We're praying. We're going mass together. And so we're just giving it all we have. And, we're working like 15, 16, 18-hour days around the clock because this is what it requires. It's a very intense level of work for something like this. But, we're just putting it in God's hands, too, primarily. So we're just doing the best we can and trusting that God will that we trust His will. So that's how we're approaching it. Well, and also you know the importance of this case and this work, and this is what you do, right, at the Thomas More Law Center, right? Exactly. Thomas More Society. Thomas More Society. No. There's another organization. Yeah, Thomas More Society. Yes, this is what we do.
it's a it's a blessing to be able to do this work, and an honor and a privilege to represent Heartbeat and Real Options and provide them with pro bono representation. I think it would be a multi-seven-figure legal bill if this was a price. They could never afford this kind of representation. So it's truly a blessing that they are able to get pro bono representation through Thomas More Society, thanks to their generous donors. Yes.
Well, let's have you back on. I mean, I know we have Dr. Delgado who's testifying next week, but I'd like to keep in touch, Paul, and we'll check in with you. But thank you for your work, and this is so important. Amazing. Thomas More Society, thomasmoresociety.org. And as I said, there's a summary on the homepage. You can check out this case. And please pray for Heartbeat International and the wonderful attorneys representing them, and support pro-life causes. We'll be right back. Almost 55 minutes past the hour. Hope your Friday is going beautifully. I'll tell you what, the Paul Jonas of the world and the wonderful organizations such as Thomas More Society, they must have the patience of Job. I don't know if I could sit there in the court. I would just want to stand up and scream. God bless them. And God bless the wonderful pro-life pregnancy resource centers out there, and Heartbeat International, CareNet, and all of them. I do such great work. Okay. Coming up on Monday, we are going to be checking in with Dr. Peter Howard all about this amazing conference, which is tied directly to the eve of Fulton Sheen's beatification. So this conference is going on the day before. It's going to be phenomenal. So many people are speaking, really, really fine quality speakers, including several from EWTN. And it is a great conference, and we've got the scoop for you. It is filling up, though, so you want to check that out. And then we're also going to be sharing with you an interview we did with This Hour, and that is about courtesy. Robert Grieving was with us not too long ago here in second hour of Catholic Connection, talking about courtesy, being professional, being kind, and the influence that can have, not just in your own circle of family and friends, and the difference that can make in the long run. And another great conference we want to tell you about is one coming up all about spiritual warfare, and that's coming up actually very, very soon in the next week or so. Dan Burke, about spiritual direction. It's all about his summit. And then another interview on trans ideology. You don't want to miss the interview with Dr. Teresa Farnan. Have a great weekend. Talk to you on a Monday. Ciao, ciao.